My parents said, "We love your brother's children more." They were not welcome at Thanksgiving sometimes. Life takes us to a point where we can't believe what's happening to us. This is the story of a man who never questioned his fate, who believed everything was normal, until one night, when a hidden truth shattered his world. If you think fate is always fair, this story will make you rethink everything. But let me ask you something. What if the person you trust the most is the one betraying you? What would you do? I never imagined that one day my own parents would look me in the eyes and tell me that my children weren't welcome in their home. But there I was, standing in my kitchen, staring at my phone in disbelief. Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away, and my mother's voice was unusually light as she spoke. "Honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving this year." For a moment, my heart warmed. Despite the years of tension, I had always longed for these family traditions. My kids, Emma and Lucas, adored their grandparents, no matter how much distance had formed between us. "Of course, Mom. What's the plan?" I asked, already picturing their house filled with the aroma of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and the warmth of a family gathering. There was a pause, just long enough to send a chill down my spine. "Well," Mom continued, clearing her throat, "we're doing things a little differently this year. It's going to be a small dinner, just adults, something more intimate." I frowned. "Oh, so no kids at all?" Another hesitation. Then, more cautiously, "Well, not exactly." Cold knot twisted in my stomach. "What do you mean?" She let out a sigh, as if she was the one being put in an uncomfortable position. "Ally, we love your kids, we really do, but they're a bit, energetic. And honestly, we just feel like it would be better if you left them with a sitter this year." I gripped the edge of the counter. "So just my kids? What about Daniel's?" Daniel, my older brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, even when he did. Mom hesitated, and that's when I knew. "Daniel and Sophie are coming with their boys," she admitted. "But you know how well-behaved they are, Ally. They're just quieter, more refined. It's easier to have them at the table." A wave of heat flushed through me. I felt like I had been slapped. "They're just children," I said, my voice tight. "Emma is 7, and Lucas is 4. Of course, they have energy, but they're sweet, and they love you. We're just trying to have a peaceful evening," Mom replied. Her tone clipped now, irritated that I wasn't simply accepting this. "It's not personal, Ally." "Not personal?" I clenched my jaw, swallowing back the sharp words fighting to spill out. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about the way they had always treated my children as an afterthought, while placing Daniel's boys on a pedestal. The way they showed up for their school plays but never for Emma's dance recital. The way Christmas gifts were always just a little extra for Daniel's kids. And now they weren't even hiding it anymore. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "You're actually telling me that my kids aren't welcome, but Daniel's are?" "Oh, Ally, don't be dramatic," Mom sighed. "It's just one dinner. You and Liam are still invited, of course." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. They wanted me there, but not the two people I loved most in this world? I swallowed hard. "No, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, then neither am I." A long silence stretched between us. Then, Mom exhaled sharply, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Suit yourself." And just like that, she hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone, my breath unsteady. From the next room, I could hear my kids giggling as they built a pillow fort, completely oblivious to the fact that their grandparents, the ones they adored, had just cast them aside like an inconvenience. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I had spent my entire life trying to please my parents, trying to earn their approval. But at what cost? And if I let them get away with this, if I went to that dinner while my children sat at home wondering why they weren't good enough, what kind of mother would that make me? No, I wasn't doing this anymore. They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine, and they would regret it sooner than they thought. They made their choice, now it was time for me to make mine. Even after I ended the call, my mother's words lingered like a bitter aftertaste. I stood in my kitchen, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My phone was still clutched in my hand, my fingers trembling slightly as I set it down. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and sadness. I had always known my parents favored Daniel, but I had convinced myself that it wasn't that bad, that deep down, they loved all of us equally. But tonight, they had ripped away any illusion of fairness. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. They loved his children more. A sudden laugh, pure, carefree, echoed from the living room. I turned to see Emma and Lucas still playing in their pillow fort, completely unaware of the rejection that had just taken place. My chest tightened. They deserved better. I squared my shoulders and walked into the living room, forcing a smile. "All right, you two," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Who's ready for movie night?" Lucas immediately perked up. "Can we watch the one with the talking dog?" I scooped him up into my arms, pressing a kiss into his soft curls. "Of course, buddy." But as we curled up on the couch, the anger inside me refused to settle. I had spent years trying to fit into my parents' world, playing by their rules, hoping that if I just did everything right, they would finally see me as equal to Daniel. But it had never been enough, and I was done trying. The next morning, a text from Daniel. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was buzzing with a message from Daniel. "Daniel, Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. "Oh, so she already ran to him? Me? Oh? Did she also tell you that she uninvited my kids? But invited yours?" The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped. A minute passed before he finally responded. "Daniel, she just wants a calm dinner, ally. You know how your kids can be. A lot. Like they were a burden. Like they were something to be tolerated, not loved." Something inside me snapped. "Me? Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Daniel. I won't be there." I turned off my phone before he could respond. If they didn't want me or my children at their table, fine. I wouldn't be part of their world at all. And they were about to find out what that really meant. For years, I had been the reliable one. Whenever my parents needed something, they called me. If they needed someone to pick up their groceries, me. When their Wi-Fi stopped working, me. If they wanted help organizing a family party, me. And Daniel? He got to be the golden child, doing the bare minimum while reaping all the rewards. But if I wasn't part of their preferred family, then they weren't going to benefit from me anymore. 1 week before Thanksgiving, Mom called again. I debated ignoring it, but finally I answered. "Hello, ally," she said, her tone cautious. "I just wanted to check in. I know you were upset, but I really hope you'll reconsider. We would love to have you and Liam there." "Not my kids," I asked flatly. Another pause. Then her voice turned clipped. "It's just one night. You know how much Daniel's boys mean to us." There it was, the final, painful confirmation that my children, the two little humans I loved more than anything, would never be enough for her. I clenched my jaw. "You've made it clear where we stand, Mom. I won't bother you again." "Ally, don't be like this." I ended the call before she could finish, and this time I didn't cry. I started small. That weekend, when Dad called me to help him set up his new TV, I let it go to voicemail. When Mom sent a text asking if I could pick up her prescription, I left it unread. For years, I had been at their beck and call. Always available, always reliable, but not anymore, and it didn't take long for them to notice. Thanksgiving morning, a message from Daniel. "Daniel, Mom and Dad are really upset that you're ignoring them. Are you seriously going to let this go this far?" Me. It already went too far when they told me my kids weren't welcome. This time, he didn't reply. I put my phone on silent and turned my attention to my real family. Emma and Lucas were at the table, helping Liam mix pancake batter. Their faces were covered in flour, laughing hysterically. This was our Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. But little did I know, my parents weren't done yet, and their next move would be something I'd never forgive. Thanksgiving morning was peaceful until the call came. For the first time in years, Thanksgiving morning was stress-free. No rushing to get the kids dressed in their best clothes. No panicking over bringing the perfect side dish. No anxious glances at the clock, making sure we weren't late. Instead, we were in our own little world. Our home filled with laughter, the smell of pancakes, and the warmth of a real family. Emma and Lucas took turns stirring the batter while Liam flipped pancakes with exaggerated skill, making them giggle every time he almost dropped one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. And then again. Liam shot me a concerned look. Want me to turn it off? I hesitated, then shook my head. No. If it's an emergency, I should at least know. I swiped to answer, keeping my voice flat. What is it, Mom? Oh, now you pick up, she huffed. I suppose you're just sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself while we're all here having a lovely dinner. I sighed. Mom, if you called to gloat, I really don't have time. That's not why I called. Her voice turned sharp. I need to ask you something. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What now? Did you cancel the credit card? The room suddenly felt very still. I turned away from Liam, lowering my voice. What are you talking about? Your father's credit card. The one we've been using for groceries, gas, essential things. It was declined this morning. A slow, icy realization crept up my spine. The credit card she was talking about wasn't theirs. It was mine. Years ago, when Dad was recovering from surgery and money was tight, I had temporarily added them as authorized users on my account to help them through a rough patch. I had meant to remove them once they got back on their feet. But life got busy, and I had forgotten. And clearly, they had never reminded me. I clenched my jaw. You mean my credit card? A pause. Then Mom scoffed. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Ally. It's just a card. You make good money, and we figured... You figured what? My voice was shaking now. That you'd just keep using my money? That I wouldn't notice. Mom let out a long, dramatic sigh. Oh, don't act like this is some big betrayal. We raised you. The least you could do is support us now. I inhaled sharply. Are you serious? After telling me my kids weren't good enough to come to Thanksgiving, you still expected me to keep paying for your groceries? Are you even hearing yourself? Mom let out a long, exasperated sigh. You know what, Ally? This is exactly why we don't like having difficult conversations with you. You always overreact. Overreact. I was done. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I did cancel the card. And since we're having honest conversations now, let me make something very clear. You won't see another cent from me. Ever. Mom gasped like I had slapped her. Ally, don't be ridiculous. I cut her off. And while we're at it, don't expect Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, or anything else either. You made your choice when you told me my kids weren't welcome. And now I'm making mine. Silence. Then, in a voice colder than I'd ever heard from her, she said, You'll regret this. And then she hung up. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. Then slowly, I turned back toward the kitchen. Liam was watching me carefully. Everything okay? I forced a small smile. Yeah, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Just taking out the trash. He didn't ask any more questions. We spent the rest of the day in our own Thanksgiving, watching movies, baking cookies, playing board games. And for the first time in years, there was no underlying stress. No need to walk on eggshells. No pressure to be someone I wasn't. But as peaceful as it was, something told me this wasn't over. And I was right, because my parents weren't just going to let their golden source of money walk away. And their next move would prove exactly what kind of people they really were. 3 days after Thanksgiving, a call from Daniel. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. I exhaled sharply and answered, What do you want? What the hell, Ally? He snapped, skipping any pleasantries. Mom just called me in tears, saying you cut them off. What is wrong with you? I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Did she also tell you that they've been using my credit card for years without my knowledge? A pause. Well, She said you were helping them. I let out a humorless laugh. Helping them? Daniel, they've racked up thousands of dollars on my account, without asking, while treating my kids like garbage. But sure, let's act like I'm the bad guy here. He sighed, clearly trying to control his frustration. Look, I get that you're mad, but cutting them off completely? That's extreme. Oh, you mean the way they completely excluded my children from Thanksgiving? I shot back. They just wanted a peaceful evening, ally. Mom said your kids can be a little wild. My grip on the phone tightened. Oh, I see, I said coldly. So they can use my money, but my kids aren't good enough for their table. Got it. Daniel groaned. You're twisting this. No, Daniel. I'm finally seeing it for what it is. There was a long pause. Then his voice turned calculating. Look, maybe we can work something out. What if you just kept helping them but set limits, like a smaller monthly transfer? That way, no one has to suffer over a misunderstanding. A cold laugh bubbled up in my throat. Let me get this straight. You want me to keep sending them money? After they literally told me they love your kids more than mine. They didn't mean it like that, he grumbled. They said it, Daniel. He had no response for that. After a moment, his voice turned stiff. Fine. If you want to be selfish, that's on you. But don't expect Mom and Dad to forgive you anytime soon. I smirked, shaking my head. I'll survive. Then, before he could argue, I hung up. Weeks of silence. Then, the letter arrived. For the next few weeks, my parents played the silent treatment game. No calls. No texts. I figured they were hoping I'd cave, that I'd come crawling back, begging for their approval, like I always had. But what they didn't realize was that, for the first time in my life, I didn't need it. And just when I thought they'd finally given up, they pulled one last, desperate stunt. A week before Christmas, Liam found the letter. Liam grabbed the mail from the mailbox and furrowed his brow as he read the sender's name. It's from your parents. I stiffened. Oh, great. Let me guess. Guilt, manipulation, or straight-up gaslighting. He smirked. Why don't we find out? I took the envelope, my stomach twisting as I tore it open. Inside was a formal legal document. My breath caught as I read the words. They were demanding reimbursement for years of emotional and financial support. I let out a disbelieving laugh. You have got to be kidding me. Liam took the letter from my hands, scanning it quickly. They're saying you owe them for raising you, for all the financial sacrifices they made for your well-being. He looked up, jaw tightening. Are they actually trying to bill you for your own childhood? Apparently they were. They had even included itemized costs. Things like heavy checkmark food, heavy checkmark clothes, heavy checkmark school supplies, heavy checkmark medical expenses from when I was a child, and at the bottom of the page, a final total. $78,542. I blinked. They seriously think I'm going to give them nearly 80 grand? Liam scoffed. They must be desperate. I exhaled slowly, anger burning through me. This wasn't about money. This was control. A final, pathetic attempt to pull me back into their grip. I looked at Liam, my mind already made up. I think it's time I pay them a little visit. The next day, I showed up at their door. I knocked, gripping the letter in my hands. When Mom opened the door, her face immediately hardened. Oh, so now you show up. I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I held up the letter. You seriously thought this would work? She folded her arms. It's what's fair. I let out a sharp laugh. Fair? You want to charge me for being your child, while expecting free money from me for the rest of your lives? Dad appeared in the doorway, his expression smug. We sacrificed a lot for you, ally, and now you're abandoning us. I stared at them, shaking my head. No, Dad. You abandoned me when you made it clear that my kids weren't good enough. When you lied and stole from me. When you put a price tag on my worth. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. If you don't want to pay, then I guess we'll have to involve lawyers. I met her gaze, unfazed. Go ahead. She blinked. What? I crossed my arms. Take me to court. Try to explain to a judge why you're suing your own daughter for expenses from 20 years ago. See how that goes. Silence. For the first time, they looked unsure. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to make things right. I laughed. Oh, I am making things right. Right now. Then, I ripped the letter in half, watching their eyes widen as the pieces fluttered to the ground. I am done being your personal ATM. Mom gasped. You ungrateful little... I turned on my heel. Merry Christmas. And with that, I walked away. For the first time in my life, I felt lighter. As I drove away, I realized something. They weren't upset about the money. They were upset because, for the first time ever, I had all the power. And I wasn't giving it back. I thought that was the end of it. That after ripping up their ridiculous demand for money, they'd finally back off. That maybe, just maybe, they'd sit in the wreckage of their own arrogance and realize they had pushed me too far. But people like them, they don't change. They just escalate. Christmas Eve, they showed up. Liam and I had just put the finishing touches on the tree. Emma and Lucas were in their pajamas, dancing around the living room, too excited to sleep. It was perfect. And then the doorbell rang. Liam and I exchanged a look. No way, he muttered. I walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Sure enough, Mom and Dad, and they were holding a beautifully wrapped gift. I sighed and opened the door. What do you want? Mom's face lit up with forced cheerfulness. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Dad held out the gift. This is for the kids. I folded my arms. No thanks. Mom's smile wavered. Ally, don't be stubborn. Let's not ruin Christmas over this. I let out a cold laugh. Oh, you already ruined Christmas when you told me my children weren't good enough for your table. Remember that. Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad sighed. Come on, Ally. Let's just be a family again. I stared at them, feeling nothing but exhaustion. You don't want to be a family, I said quietly. You want me to go back to being useful. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. I shook my head. Take your gift and go. Mom's expression hardened. Ally, don't be selfish. Think about the children. I smiled coldly. I am thinking about the children. That's exactly why you're not in their lives anymore. Dad's jaw tightened. You really want to do this? I exhaled. I already did. And with that, I shut the door in their faces. That night, we had the best Christmas ever. Emma and Lucas tore into their presents, their laughter echoing through the house. We drank hot cocoa, played board games, watched Christmas movies until they fell asleep on the couch. And for the first time, Christmas wasn't about trying to prove myself. It was about us. A real family. A chosen family. The kind that doesn't come with conditions. The kind that loves you because they want to, not because they expect something in return. But it wasn't over yet. Because on New Year's Eve, they did something I never saw coming. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start. A night to leave the past behind. A night to step into a better future. That's what I told myself as I set up the snack table, laughter and music filling our home. Emma and Lucas were buzzing with excitement, running around in their little party hats, counting down the hours until midnight. Liam poured champagne into 2 glasses, giving me a soft smile. It was our night, our celebration. And then the knock. I froze. My stomach twisted. Liam glanced at me. You think? I already knew. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. There they were. Mom, Dad, Daniel, and Daniel's wife, Sophie. An ambush. I crossed my arms. What do you want? Mom smiled, but it was that fake, sugary smile she always used when she wanted something. We just want to talk. No thanks, I said flatly. Dad sighed. Ally, enough. You've made your point. Now let's fix this before things go too far. I narrowed my eyes. Too far? What does that even mean? Mom exchanged a look with Daniel. We just don't want this to affect the kids. Something about her tone made my skin crawl. What are you talking about? Daniel stepped forward, arms crossed over his chest, like he was the one who had been wronged. Mom and Dad have been talking to a lawyer. A cold wave of dread rolled through me. A lawyer, I repeated slowly. Mom nodded, her eyes gleaming with false sympathy. We're just worried, Ally. You've cut your children off from their real family over a silly misunderstanding. That's not fair to them. My pulse pounded. What are you trying to say? Dad cleared his throat. We've been looking into grandparents' rights. For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Then I laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was loud, unhinged, sharp. They thought they could legally force their way back into my life, into my kids' lives. Daniel's face twisted. What's so funny? I wiped my eyes, still laughing. Oh, you're serious? I stepped forward, eyes locked on my parents. You think any judge is going to look at this situation and side with you? Mom's lips pressed together. We've done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. I took another step closer, my voice dangerously low. You stole from me. You treated my kids like second-class citizens. And now, because I finally cut you off, you think you can bully your way back in? Dad's face darkened. You don't want to do this, Ally. I smiled. Oh, but I do. I pulled out my phone and held it up. I want you to think real carefully about what you're about to do, I said, voice cold. Because I've got every text, every voicemail, every demand for money. And I promise you, if you try this, I will bury you. Sophie gasped. Ally, come on. No. I snapped, eyes locked on my parents. You have no case. You know it. I know it. And if you keep pushing me, I will make sure that everyone you know sees exactly who you really are. A beat of silence. Then Mom's face twisted in anger. You're being unreasonable. I smiled.
No, Mom.
I'm finally being smart. I stepped back into my house. Happy New Year, I said sweetly. Then I slammed the door in their faces. They never followed through with their legal threat, because they knew they had nothing. They knew they had lost. And in the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from them. Not a call, not a text, nothing. And for the first time in my life, felt like freedom. Months later, a beautiful spring day, I sat on the porch, watching Emma and Lucas chase bubbles in the yard. Liam handed me a lemonade and sat beside me. It's been quiet, he murmured. I nodded. Yeah, feels good. He smirked. Think they'll ever try again? I sipped my drink, watching my kids giggle as they popped the bubbles. Doesn't matter, I said simply, because I had already won. I had my kids, my real family, and I would never let anyone make them feel unwanted again, so this story teaches us something important, that in this world, money, relationships, and power mean nothing if the truth is hidden. But what happens when the truth is so painful that your heart refuses to believe it? Every story carries a hidden lesson, a truth we all need to learn. And if you want to hear more stories that touch your heart and shake your soul, hit the subscribe button now and share your thoughts in the comments.